The year was 2004. The Boston Red Sox were down 3 games to none to the New York Yankees in the American League Championship Series that year. The series looked bleak. It didn't look like the Red Sox were going to be able to pull it off, and it would require seemingly magical, maybe even supernatural forces to pull out what seemed like an improbable series win against a superior opponent. Red Sox infielder Kevin Millar, before the game, was talking to reporter Dan Shaughnessy and said the following: "I'll tell you what, don't let us win today." And the reason why Millar said that was he felt like with one win, even though they were down 3 games to none, one win could change the momentum of the series. And then after that, they were going to throw their best pitchers at the Yankees. And then Game 7, like he said, anything can happen. The New York Mets just pulled off their own moment, winning a win-or-go-home Game 5 against the Los Angeles Dodgers. To say that this was one of the most important games in Met postseason history, not an understatement. The Mets came, they saw, and they conquered in a fantastic 12-6 win over the Dodgers, sending the series back to LA. And now we know one game can change everything. Game 6, we got the advantage. Sean Manaea on the mound. Game 7, like Millar said, anything can happen. Roll the music. Hello, welcome to Mike's Maths Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Pashota. Happy Friday to you, and I hope everyone is having a wonderful Friday night. I certainly am, even though I had to watch this game sort of out of the corner of my eye because I had to keep working, unfortunately. But what a game! What a series it has been thus far between the Mets and the Los Angeles Dodgers. We're going to talk about mostly Game 5. There isn't that much to talk about for the other games because it's been a lot of blowouts, and I'm going to summarize Games 1 through 4. The team that won by a lot. The team that lost gave up a lot of runs. There we go. It's been an ugly series. This has not been one of those picturesque pitcher duels type series. This is like something out of like 2005. Like this is a series where it's just murderers row after murderers row, runs being scored, bases getting hit, home runs being home runs, and what we have now is a series. We're going to continue having a series because the Mets, as I detailed in my very lengthy intro, stunned the Los Angeles Dodgers after looking completely shell-shocked in games 3 and 4 by the Dodgers' bats, the pitching. Everything looked really dominant for Los Angeles, and they had Jack Flaherty on the mound. Jack Flaherty had pitched an excellent game 1 for the Dodgers, but right from the beginning, he got kicked in the teeth. And Flaherty did not look good, and this looked like Flaherty from NLDS rather than that Game 1 performance. He got hit with a 3-run home run to start the game off by none other than our other magical friend, Pete Alonso. The polar bear reared his head back and popped a 3-run blast and set the stage off for what was going to be a pretty hefty beatdown on the part of the Mets. That despite the final score at times felt a little tight, the Dodgers kept coming back. As my brother texted me, they are relentless, and it is the case. They are a team that knows exactly what they're doing in terms of their approach at the plate. They have a very deep lineup, not unlike Philadelphia. The difference is that Philadelphia, as has been talked about several times over the last week or so, Philadelphia's approach was swing at everything, and maybe we'll get a home run out of that. It's not dissimilar to the Mets. I like to think the Mets have a little bit more patience. They draw a few more walks than Philadelphia, but their approaches are fairly similar, which is if you get a pitch that to hit, you swing at it, and if you're locked in, like some of the Mets players have been, you can do a lot. You can do a lot of damage. The Dodgers' approach is basically a very much more passive one. We'll take the walk if you're going to give it to us. They led the National League in walks this year. They were the right marriage of aggressive and passive at different points of the series, which is basically just letting the Mets pitchers who struggled with their command for most of this series. Uh, they've just let them say, okay, all right, well, if you're going to struggle with your command, we're just not going to swing at anything close, and we're going to get our walks, and we're going to get guys on base, and it's going to lead the big innings. It's been a very successful formula for Los Angeles. It's one that's benefited them all year long, and it's benefited them certainly in this series. And the Mets were not. The Mets were not executing. They were not doing anything correctly. And if it was a problem with the rotation, it was a problem with the lineup. And it felt very much like we were setting this up for a almost very by the numbers win for Los Angeles in Game 5. And again, they were starting Jack Flaherty. Flaherty had pitched fantastic for them in his first start in Game 1. And if you were Los Angeles, you were like, we got to clinch this. We don't want it to get any further. We don't want this team getting any kind of momentum back because, unfortunately, once the Mets get momentum, it really starts to like peter up and make teams all of a sudden realize that they have this opponent that just won't die. They won't go away. I don't know if the day off is going to serve as a detriment to the Mets or not. It does feel like every time the Mets kind of get a win here, all of a sudden, okay, well, we're going back on the road now, so there's no way for them to maintain any kind of momentum going forward. I will stay on the side of optimism and say, well, they won that crazy Milwaukee game and took that momentum into the Philadelphia series with not very much time, unfortunately, but right after that, so I guess they were able to maintain the momentum somewhat. But because of the time off in between Philadelphia and LA, it felt like it struggled with it. They did impact their lineup's ability to kind of get going here, and that they need a little bit more of a ramp up in order to kind of get the offense going. So I am a little concerned for the offense in Game 6, but if they can get through Game 6, and crucially, the Mets are going to have Sean Manaea on the mound in Game 6. By all indications are supposed to be Manaea for Game 6. We don't really know what the Dodgers are going to do. Their move last time in Game 2 was to go to a bullpen game. It was a disaster. The bullpen was not able to do anything against the Mets, and very quickly were down in that series after the Mark Vientos grand slam in Game 2. So it's not clear if Dave Roberts, the Los Angeles Dodgers manager, is going to go back that route. I would hope no for them if I'm a Dodgers fan. As a Met fan, I fully support them going back to the bullpen game. It was a scrutinized decision at the time. People didn't really understand it, but the Dodgers rotation is not what you would call a series of superstars, even though they've pitched great in the series. They've gotten great starts from Yamamoto and Flaherty initially, and then, of course, Walker Buehler in Game 3. It was a big thing for them, and if the series, let's go back to Game 7, they'll have Buehler on the mound again. Bueller was unreal in that game. I don't know what exactly was going on. You can blame it on the wind. You can blame it on a lot of things. I never seen him pitch quite that well in what was a very long period of time. It seemed a little out of left field that he pitched that well in that game. So for him to repeat it would seem unlikely. But I think the Mets could get to him, and if they get to him early, then it's all she wrote at that point. Of course, this Dodgers team has a little bit of the "we will not go away" DNA that the Mets have, which is it does feel like every once in a while that this team just going to just have like a huge inning, and the only sort of cure for it is just maintain enough big innings yourself earlier before the Dodgers have their big inning, and then you can just hope to ride it out with your bullpen, which has not been which is not a great strategy, but it's what the Mets can probably do to stay alive in the series. So I do feel like the Mets can pull out Game 6. Again, it's going to rely on Manaea pitching well. And if there's a guy that the Mets have a lot of confidence in, it is Manaea. Manaea looked excellent for the most part in that Game 2 start against LA. And despite their familiarity with Manaea, one would assume the Dodgers hitters all having, it didn't feel like they had really any kind of solution to him other than Manaea having trouble with his control in his last inning of work, which led to the Dodgers getting guys on base and it becoming a little bit more of a okay, like it's getting a little tight now. So, and they had to pull Manaea after 5 innings, and it was kind of touch and go there for a minute, but the Mets pulled off that Game 2 win. So if he can pitch like he did, and I'm hoping he can pitch even better, this is going to be the biggest start of Manaea's career. He has to pitch in hostile territory in LA, a team that has a juggernaut lineup, a team that does not like to swing, and Manaea is most effective when he's getting swings and misses. He has to pitch at an elite caliber, and Manaea would not be, people would assume, would not look at him and say this is an elite starter. He's had his struggles, but he has, in the second half of the season for the Mets, been their ace. He has unquestionably been their top starter, and probably would have been, with the benefit of hindsight, of course, most Mets fans' first choice to pitch Game 1 after Game 1 of this series, and instead of going with the whole Kodai Senga debacle. So what we have now is a guy who I think Met fans do feel very comfortable with. I think they look at Manaea and say, we can put this guy in a start and feel comfortable with what he's going to give us. And if I'm going to go back to my 2004 ALCS example with the Red Sox, Game 6 was a big one for them also. That was Schilling on the mound. That was the Bloody Sock game. And it required Schilling to pitch at a level that no one had really seen him pitch at before. He had to pitch hurt on a bad ankle, and the Bloody Sock was, of course, the thing that everybody remembers from that series and from that game, of course. But that Game 6 was a big one. He has to, in Manaea, if you're going to look at it, you're like that he has to pitch as well as Schilling did in that game, which was 6 2/3, 7 innings, and one run. I believe that was the Schilling pitching line that game that year. So it's going to be a similar start. If they have to have any kind of hope in the series, he has to pitch terrific, and the Met offense has to at least be a little effective in this one. They have to get some runs going. They cannot repeat what they were doing in games 1, 3, and 4 in the series, which was looking incredibly listless, and they didn't seem to have any idea as to their approach, and it led to a lot of swings and misses. And that is probably the death of this team, is when they are just striking out repeatedly over and over again. It's the one thing you really cannot have, and it's telling that in the games 2 and 5 that the Mets have won, it has not been their problem. They have been fantastic at staying out of from striking out. In fact, they would not strike out one time in this game five win over the Dodgers, which is incredible. I mean, they were all over the place in game four. It was a complete 180 from the approach of the Mets, and everybody was getting into it, with the exception of Vientos, who went 0 for 5. But again, no strikeouts. Which if you're 0 for 5 with no strikeouts, I feel like that's just like bad luck. I mean, that's just things not really going your way. But so be it. And uh, uh, Mets manager Carlos Mendoza did a little bit of the juggling with the lineup today. Left Lindor in the leadoff spot, but switched up Nimmo and Vientos. Nimmo had the lone his lone hit of the game, but did drive in a run and also walked. And of course, Pete Alonso was fantastic, sandwiched in between Vientos and Winker. Alonso had a great game, two for three, and the big shot, the 3-run home run, set the tone for the game. Terrific job from him. Winker, who had been kind of struggling for the most part of his swing and had seen his at bats kind of dipping with Mendoza going to JD Martinez with little to no effect, went back to Winker for this game, and Winker was excellent. 2 for 3 himself. Drove in a run himself as well. And we also saw Starling Marte go 4 for 5. Marte was doing a lot this game, 3 doubles, and drove in a run in the 8th inning as well. So he had, along with the RBI doubles, he had 3 RBIs altogether in total, and a couple of triples. Winker and Lindor both tripling in this game as well. The game was started by David Peterson, who was pretty good for the most part. He wasn't fantastic, and was getting into trouble in the fourth, which was why he got pulled in favor of Garrett. Garrett wasn't able to help really in any way. Garrett's been pretty forgettable this series, unfortunately, which has been kind of the problem here, and they had to go to Ryan Stanek for 2 1/3 innings. Stanek gave up a home run to Mookie Betts, but other than that, was excellent. Struck out 4 in the 2 1/3 innings, no walks. He looked great, and then went for the 6-out save with Evan Diaz, and pleasantly, surprisingly so, Diaz was excellent in this game. He went 2 innings, only allowed the 1 base hit, no walks. Also great to see from Diaz. Struck out a pair and only threw 23 pitches, which was it was great to see. If you're going to potentially need Diaz for Game 6 and 7, you want a rested Diaz, a Diaz who hasn't been throwing an excessive amount of pitches, because that does lead to some problems. So he looked great. Stanek also looked good, and it's going to be. Oh boy, the Met bullpen has not looked great. The Met starters haven't looked great also, which has required the bullpen to get a little bit more involved at times in this series. And they haven't had quite the same level of success as they did in that Phillies series, where the Met bullpen was fantastic. The Dodgers have been a little bit harder to put away and get the job done against, but other than that, I think you can look at it as an unqualified success. They've done a great job, and I'm looking forward to seeing what the Mets can do over these final 2 games. It's going to be everybody's temperature was pretty high in this game. People were looking at it as, okay, like if this is the end, this is the end. I was looking at it from the place of optimism, because I did look at it as, okay, like, don't let us win this game. If you let us win this game, we will come back. We will take Game 6 from you because we have the advantage in the starting pitcher. And then Game 7, anything can happen. So that was the way I looked at the series. Some people were a little bit more bleak. I saw on both Twitter and other sites, people looking at it as, oh, well, like, there's no point going to this game. It's a wash. The Mets don't look like they have the same magic as they did in the NLDS. There's no point. And first of all, even if that's the case, don't try and like bring that out. Don't try and just say that. Don't try and like reverse jinx us and say that stuff out loud. No one wants to hear that. look at it from a place of optimism. Banish the negativity has been my mantra throughout this postseason, where I'm just like, you got to get it out of your head. You got to stop thinking about all of the problems that they've had in the past and look at the potential successes that they can have, and also look at it as an amazing story. This team has gone far, far, far deeper than anybody would have expected. To even get to a 6 game in the NLCS, people will look at it as a success. I look at it as one final stage for us before they go to the World Series, because I do think they can beat the Dodgers. I think the Dodgers needed to put the series to bed in this one, because it does raise a lot of questions about if this team can actually pull it off. The Dodgers haven't had a great track record in the postseason these last few years. They've seen themselves be knocked off by teams that no one would have expected. The Arizona Diamondbacks spring to mind last year. Diamondbacks team that no one would have even dared assume would beat the Dodgers, beat the absolute tar out of them in the NLTS last year, and people were stunned. It really was like this Dodger team that was just it seemed destined to go to the World Series. Getting bounced so early was such a dramatic staging that no one could. I don't think anybody expected that to happen, and it did lead to the Diamondbacks going all the way to the World Series. So there are problems with the Dodgers. It hasn't been readily available or visible for people to see these last couple of games, because they've just been so dominant and just blowing out the Mets in back-to-back games. It did give people more in a few cases of, I don't know, maybe this isn't our year. The Dodgers look too good. And I don't look at it that way. I look at the Dodgers as a team that struggles to put people away. This is the team that they should be scared about. This is the team that won't go away. Even if they beat us twice, wonderful, great job. You beat the hell out of us in games 3 and 4. You couldn't do it in Game 5? It was the other way around. Flaherty got pummeled in this one, and that's got to be some cause of concern, because Flaherty, as great as he looked in Game 1, looked terrible in Game 5. So if we're assuming that the Mets can get to Game 7, which is what the Dodgers are kind of hanging their hat on, they're like, okay, well, we got Walker Buehler. Buehler looked great in Game 3. He gave us 4 fantastic innings, and that was enough to get us past the Mets in that game and dig into their bullpen once they got Severino out of the game. It did lead to I don't think that Buehler can do that again. I just don't. Buehler has had a terrible track record as of late, and it seems almost unnatural that he was pitching that well. It looked like the Mets were pressing. It didn't feel like they felt comfortable. Buehler was absolutely yelling. His stuff was all over the place. He had terrific control and was just peppering the outside corner in that game all game. And he looked unbelievable. I just don't think he can do it again. And I do think the Mets kick him in the teeth in Game 1. In the first inning, like they did with Flaherty, if it does come to a Game 7, and I think it will. That's my prediction for the rest of the series. Mets take Game 6 behind a great start from Sean Manaea, and they at least to Game 7. And Game 7, like I said, anything can happen, but that would be my assumption for how the rest of the series is going to play out. And I do think that we see the Mets vanquish the Dodgers in 7 games and win in LA and go off the World Series to face either the Yankees or the Guardians. We'll see who they face ultimately, but I do think we're looking at a Subway Series. So hold on to your hats, and we'll see how this goes. I'm hoping to record the final 2 games, of the series. So I will see everybody on Sunday, where I am predicting a Met victory in Game 6. And then it's going to be a crazy Game 7. So we will see how that goes. So I will see everybody on Game 6. Let's go, Mets. Thank you for listening to the Mike Spence podcast. Please be sure to follow us on Spotify and subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. Finally, please also follow the podcast Twitter, which is Mike Spence Pod, all one word. Appreciate your time and have a wonderful rest of your day or evening. Let's go, Mets.